right here, we're gonna test the Aquila16 here. So let's power this up. All right, so now this is synced. All right, looks good. Let's see how this thing here goes. I'm in sport mode right now. This seems to be the best mode so far. And there it goes. Image is kind of dark, but. All right, so manual mode. Wow, there you go. It shivers. You can hear it shaking and you can hear all that noise. It doesn't like to bank or do any of that stuff. I feel like there's like crazy prop wash. Just by itself, you can hear it shivering. And the image is kind of dark here. So I'm gonna go into, look at that oscillation. You can hear that thing shiver. There's my landing pad. And I notice also the camera tilt tends to go up on its own. It flies really good in angle mode or sport mode. This is the mode I would recommend you guys fly this drone, honestly. It is some kind of, it is still the FPV experience, but when I put it into manual mode, the flight controller freaks out. As you can see, it's doing a pretty decent job. This is 350 milliwatts. And not bad. In fact, yeah, as I said, I'm having a better experience here in sport mode. Let's see if we can go up here a little bit. Take a look at some of these trees. Pretty nice. Go over here. That's pretty good. This is a 350 milliwatt VTX. And I've had issues in the past, even with digital systems going in there. And it seems like this drone does a better job in the darker areas rather than in bright environments. So indoors it was fine. Out here in the forest here with all these trees and shadows and moss and everything here, it's doing a pretty decent job. Let's see if we can go a little higher. I just can't see the tree moss too well. I don't want to get it stuck up there. Oh, there's a whole bunch of like hanging down right there. So we're not going to go in there. If that gets stuck in your propeller, you're done. A little twig there. See, I can get back in here. Can I get back in here? If I can see, I can get back in here. Not bad. Not bad, not bad. It's actually kind of fun doing that. Let's see what's over here. How far can I get on this 350 milliwatt VTX? There's a nice little trail here. Not bad. Not bad. The image isn't the best, but if you want an FPV experience, then there you go. But when I put it into manual mode, guys, it doesn't like it. Here we are. There we are. It's pretty fun. Let's see here. Full acro mode. There it is. So you want to know if it does acro. It can do flips. I don't know about a power loop. Power loop is gonna be really hard. Look at that. All right, this arm. All right, so that was around 6 minutes of arm time. Not bad. All right, so let's go get it. All right, here it is, Aquila16. Let's power this down. All right, so that did a pretty decent job outdoors, not too bad. The winds aren't that strong today right now under this. I mean, it's almost calm to be honest with you, but we're looking at between calm and 5 mile an hour winds. Yeah, between 5 miles an hour. So not the strongest winds. So let's head back to the studio and I'll let you know what I think about the Aquila16. Okay, so we're back from our flight test and I have some interesting thoughts about the Aquila16 RTF. Let's start with flight characteristics, which I'm probably going to be very critical about. Now, the Aquila16 did a pretty amazing job flying indoors. I flew it upstairs, downstairs, through gaps. This thing was very, very smooth. I actually had a blast flying this thing indoors. I would say this is probably a better indoor drone. Now, if you're a brand spanking new pilot, I do recommend you start off in the normal mode and you can have this thing here have altitude and position hold. Now, I did try this indoors as you saw in the setup video and it worked pretty well. I also went outside and tried the same thing, and although there were some winds outside, it did a really, really good job maintaining altitudes. Now, I flew the majority of my indoor flights in sport mode and that gave me a good feel for the drone while preventing this drone from getting kind of squirrely or out of hand if it were to bump some object. Now, this sport mode with the Aquila16 is very similar to angle mode in your traditional Betaflight drones, and most of your professional pilots use that mode while flying or racing indoors. So it's a really cool and a good balance between performance and stability. Now, flying the Aquila16 outdoors was a bit of a challenge. Now, I chose to fly on days where the winds were between calm and 5 miles an hour, so the winds weren't particularly high. Now, I started off in sport mode and I had a pretty good experience, but I quickly realized with this big open space, it makes more sense to go into manual mode. Now, I put it into manual mode and this thing felt immediately like a traditional drone, and I could feel the increased rates and sensitivity of the controls. But it wasn't long until I had to make a turn, and then I felt some kind of a wobble, as you saw in the introductory video. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was maybe I was a little bit too aggressive on the sticks. Maybe this is a beginner tiny whip or sin whip. And I was like, okay, I'm still getting familiar with the controls. It's in manual mode. So I decided to fly straight again, made another turn again, and it wobbled again. So I said, okay, I'm maybe being too aggressive here. Maybe the winds are picking up. So let's do another turn in the opposite direction. And the same thing happened again. For some reason, this thing here is getting a lot of washout. I don't know what, but whenever you do a yaw, even a coordinated yaw, it still tends to tumble. And that's what it feels like. It feels like a tumble, or just maybe the flight controller is freaking out, like a bad tune. So there's numerous things going on there, and I couldn't tell if it was the flight controller, if it was a not so perfect tune, or if it was just prop wash. The honest truth is, it's kind of frustrating, guys. I did fly that entire pack, and it kind of put a damper on my flight, guys. So I came back home, took a closer look at this drone. There's nothing broken. The propellers are actually brand spanking new. I didn't see anything that was wrong with the drone, to the point where I actually took off these screws and took a look at the flight controller. Nothing looked abnormal in there. Now, the bad part about this whole thing is that this thing has a custom firmware on here. This doesn't have Betaflight, so there wasn't really a way to actually plug it into the computer and take a good look at the tune or configuration on this drone. Having said that, if you're a new pilot into FPV, you're not gonna go on the computer and try to alter the settings on your drone. So you would expect this thing to have a pretty good tune out the box. So I did come back out a few other days, try to do some more flying, and sure enough, that same wobble or washout still stayed there. But I wish this thing flew a lot better in manual mode. It's such a potentially great drone, guys. This thing looks the part. It looks like a really good flight. It's built well, but I do think either the gyro or the tune on here isn't the best, especially in manual mode. The good thing though, in my opinion, I think this can be all rectified with some firmware updates. If they could just update the firmware on the tune, I don't know how they can get that to the pilots, but I think just a proper tune on here could fix that. Okay, moving on to visuals. The Aquila16 has a CO2 camera and a 350 milliwatt VTX. And this thing did an amazing job of flying it indoors. Now I flew up here, downstairs, and outdoors, even out to the porch and outside while I was flying upstairs, and never once did I have a breakup, all at 25 milliwatts. So that's pretty good. The VTX did a really good job. The camera did an amazing job as well indoors, guys. This thing was super clear. I could see everything. The colors were pretty neutral as well. So I do think that this is a good camera setup for indoor flying. Now, flying outdoors is a bit of a different experience, and it depends on your situation. I had some real challenges flying this thing outdoors with the camera, guys, and that's due to the complex exposure of outside flying. Now, I have a lot of trees, I have a lot of sunlight out here, but I think the strength of this camera is when the environment is evenly lit. So say, for example, you're flying indoors where it's a little bit dark on the outside, but everything is equally as dark, this thing will expose very well for you. Or if you're flying outdoors in the open air like a park, and it's just sunny, or if it's dark outside, this thing will do a pretty decent job. The problem comes when there's a more complex environment where there's shadows, where there's low light, and areas where there's bright light. Now, I don't want to use the word dynamic range because that's too much of a complex system for a small camera setup like this, but I've seen other cameras do a better job with exposure control. And I do think that this exposure algorithm is just maybe average, where it's monitoring the entire sensor and giving you an exposure control for the average setup. That's the reason why sometimes when you're flying outdoors, in my case where there's trees, this thing is gonna, compensate more for the bright sun and give you an average exposure, opposed to the center of the frame or the center of the actual sensor is giving you average. So now it's compensating for the sun, it's too bright compared to the shadows, and although the sky is properly or well exposed, the shadows are just crushed. You can't see anything. It's really dark. But guys, if you're gonna fly this in an environment where it's well lit or the exposure is very similar, even in this room here, it's not that bright, but it did a pretty good job. Once you start mixing the light output, it really isn't the best. Now the VTX in this drone performed very well outdoors. Now I initially flew this at 25 milliwatts and then bumped it up to 350, and 350 gave me really impressive performance, guys. At one point I was going behind trees and obstacles and I still had a really good image. Now I did take a look at the setup of this drone. I did remove the panel, and the configuration of this whole drone is pretty interesting. The VTX antenna is actually stored or housed right here near the camera. In fact, the camera, VTX, and antenna is all stored in this one little square right here. So that's a pretty interesting setup at BetaFPV, a little bit a departure from normal setups. Typically you will have a VTX antenna in the back, but it's all housed right here with the camera. 350 milliwatts is usually higher than the competition or other RTF kits, and it did a really good job considering that this antenna is buried in here. Talking about range, let's talk about the RC link on this drone. Now this has an Express LRS receiver on here, and we also have the Light 2 SE. An Express LRS is natively a good protocol for long range and for low latency. So this never had any issues with, RX reception. This thing flew really great, never once did it have an issue. And this thing, as you saw in the setup video, it came bound from the factory, so it's really good. Now the interesting thing here is that typically using Express LRS, you'll have some kind of a signal in your goggles and your OSD, and OSD means on-screen display. Usually you have like a RSSI or RSSI DBM or link quality, and that's particularly true with Express LRS. You want to see that information to tell how far you're going, when you're going to lose link. And because of this proprietary firmware or software on this drone, I didn't have the ability to see that signal strength. Now I do have a lot of faith in Express LRS, but at the same time, they say knowledge is power. It would be cool if they could put that information on the screen so I know when my values are going down and when to turn around and come back to me in case this thing does fail safe. Now the cool thing about this whole Express LRS system is if you do outgrow your drone, you can still use your Light 2 SE for more premium and bigger drones. So that's the cool thing about Express LRS. You're not just limited to this drone, you can use other drones with this one radio and controller. Okay, let's talk battery life on the Aquila16. Now, this drone has an 1100 milliamp hour 1S battery, and it's actually pretty cool to see a battery of that capacity in this small size. It's really a game changer, guys. To be honest with you, here's a 550 milliamp hour 1S battery. and this thing has twice the capacity of this in this small size. So I don't know how they're doing this. Now using this battery, I did get some impressive flight times. I averaged between 6 and 7 minutes of flight times. Now this thing says you can get 8 minutes of flight times, and honestly, I did achieve that a few times. Now you have to be flying very, very smooth and softly and controlled. And to actually achieve those numbers, you have to actually run this thing down to around 3.3 volts. And numerous times I had this thing auto land because of those low voltages. It's not like you're gonna get 8 minutes and then fly back to your location and land the drone. Once it gets to around 3.3 or 3.29, this thing will say, all right, it's enough, and this thing will auto land and land where it's currently at. So it's cool that these things work really, really well. I like the design of it. It is proprietary, so in that sense, I'm not really for proprietary hardware, but it is a pretty decent battery. Now, talking about proprietary batteries, I did fly this drone with this one S550. Well, that is very possible. As you can see, I have double-sided tape on here, and all you have to do is just stick this on this little part right here. Pretty straightforward. You have this lead right here that comes with the kit, and you can just plug this in to the drone, and you can fly this like any other battery. It has good performance. It is made by BetaFPV. Now, the aesthetics isn't that great, but it does work, and it is significantly lighter than this battery right here, so you can have some maneuverability with it. Now, using this battery on here, which is a really good battery actually, I was getting between 2 to 2.5 minutes of flight time, so not anywhere close to the 1100 milliamp hour, which is around 6.5 to 7 minutes of flight time. But it is lighter, and it does perform better with this lighter battery. Okay, so let's talk about the durability and aesthetics of the Aquila16. I had a few crashes throughout my testing, but that was over grass, so it wasn't anything hard like concrete or pavement. But I do suspect this drone to be very, very strong and durable. You have this PA12 plastic on here, and this has delivered some pretty good results on previous drones. Now, this thing is so light in nature that even if it were to crash on concrete, I don't suspect any kind of damage would incur on this drone. The camera here is recessed pretty far back and is protected here by this plastic piece right here. So I do suspect this to be a very, very durable drone. Now, as far as aesthetics on here, what more can I say? This thing looks amazing. It looks like a really good drone. Actually, one of the most attractive tiny loops out there on the market, guys. And it does look like the Avata, yes, that's true. But it's just a clean and sleek device, guys. You can just tell by the way it looks. And that's true because of this proprietary battery and this canopy here, making it look even more modern and sleek. The color theme on here is also great, which is the same thing here on the remote and on the goggles. It's a really good modern looking drone and kit, guys. Okay, so what are my final thoughts on the BetaFPV Aquila16 RTF kit? Well, I think overall this kit has a lot of potential, guys. I think BetaFPV has made a lot of tough decisions, making this thing affordable, easy to fly, and aesthetically pleasing to new pilots. And although this kit might work for brand spanking new pilots, there's a very high chance that they're gonna outgrow this kit and this drone specifically very, very quickly. And that's a shame because this drone here looks really, really amazing, guys. Now, if you're that pilot that adapts pretty quickly and outgrows this drone really, really fast, you can potentially grow with this kit. Even if you move on to other drones, you can still use your ELRS radio as well as your analog goggles with other drones. So in a sense, this kit here is kind of future-proof, and you can use this as you grow in your FPV hobby or career. Now, my biggest suggestion to BetaFPV is to offer a different tune for this drone, or maybe offer a different drone, maybe a beta flight version of the Aquila16. That would help out very, very much. Maybe offer an Aquila16 Pro. That would be an amazing drone, guys. I do think so. Just the software on this, guys, would make this a better drone. Now, I do know the reason why they went with their proprietary software. Now, that gives you the ability to have altitude hold and position hold, as well as all these other features like auto land. That's pretty cool. Now, BetaFPV is a more complex, software or firmware, but you have unlimited tuning capabilities, customization on your OSD screen if you do want to customize your drone in the future. And I do think that would help this drone significantly if that software or firmware was on this drone. So let me know what you think about the Aquila16 and this entire RTF kit down below. Is this something that you would consider if you were to get into the FPV hobby at this point? or maybe you've already purchased this RTF kit. If you have questions about that kit, leave them down below and I'll be happy to answer those questions. Now, if you're looking for a more premium drone, I have this Pavo 20 here. I've done a full review on this one, and this thing flies exceptionally well, guys. It also captures smooth cinematic 4K images. I'll leave that video linked right here. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.